All right, cool. It's Paul and Ed with the MIDCONVO podcast, and we're honored to be with Alexa Gray today. She's a LA-based marketing director, and we're about to get into a little bit more about your background, your story. But Ed, first of all, this is one of our first females on the podcast.
Yeah, I mean, it's we've had some in the past, but we're really excited for this conversation because I do feel like Alexa is paving the way for a lot of the strategies and things in digital marketing. So we're excited to get into it. But first, let's roll the intro music.
All right, so Alexa said this off the mic, but we're chilling at the Wellness Center.
Yes, that's correct.
And this is your abode here in Los Angeles. Thanks for letting us be here.
Thank you so much for having me on your podcast.
Yeah, we're honored. We want to hear about a lot of things during this conversation, this episode, hence why you're on it. But first and foremost, tell people a little bit about yourself.
Sure. So the story begins back in Beverly Hills, 1990, when I came out into the world.
Hey.
And yeah, ever since I was a kid, I was always super creative. Studied photography since I was 13 years old.
Wow.
Shot film, video, and ended up going to school for fine art photography in upstate New York at Bard College. Always worked on sets, assisting directors and fine art photographers. And it was an amazing experience, but I had always had a passion for wellness. My mother was a health advocate from a really young age. I was the most likely to overdose on supplements as my high school bit. And
holistic, right?
Very holistic and kind of ahead of her time. We were into wellness like before Erewhon and before it was all cool. So, but I really started to get in touch with different things that made me feel really good. And I started to combine my love of photography with my love of products. And I remember I started a blog called Superfood Super Life, a really cool name, I know.
That's awesome.
And I would meet different brands that had incredible, healing properties and health benefits, but their marketing was not so great. And I was always a very aesthetically driven person. I loved packaging and a whole visual world to step into. Mm-hmm. And so I started reaching out to brands and said, hey, I could shoot your product photography for you. And I'm also a social media girly and I could run your Instagram. And I also know Squarespace and I could set up your website. And I also do Klaviyo and MailChimp and I could do your newsletters. And I also do packaging and I would ship packages. I literally did everything under the sun. And I got that spirit from my parents who were both entrepreneurs. So I always grew up just working for them and they had bought and sold several businesses. And I just loved working and always found a lot of value in myself from work. So I started a social media agency in 2015 and worked with all these different brands in wellness. And then, along came an incredible brand called Olliepop. And I ended up going in-house with them several years ago. And that is kind of when my career started to take off in social and digital marketing.
Dude,
come on.
I feel insecure about my resume right now. I'm not gonna lie.
Everyone, don't
she
check.
Just went off. We're like 30 seconds in, and she just straight went in.
Edward just checked his LinkedIn page during that.
Yeah, we're channeling the powerful energy, you guys. That's what we're here to do. We're not messing around.
I want to ask a question real quick.
Sure.
You mentioned something that I feel like was super powerful in your journey, and it's that your parents were entrepreneurs.
Yeah.
I know a lot of freelancers that come from the entrepreneurial background because their parents kind of, whether they had a small business or whether they, had a family business. Did you feel like pressure growing up in a family where your parents kind of started something to kind of pave your own way in that?
Yeah, that's a great question. I feel that there was a pressure. They were really successful. And I remember growing up in LA, it's a fast city. There's a lot of wealth and wealth disparity here. And I always felt like if I don't make a certain amount, if I can't buy a home as big as my parents, then I'm not successful. And I really had to go down a journey of introspection to be like, I am not the money I make. I am not the house I can afford. I am none of that. And I am really beyond that. And so it was really interesting to address that and kind of come to a much healthier relationship with myself, which is I am the energy I bring into a room or how I affect people or the positive, impact I might have on my community. And then the rest is the cherry on top, but not just hyper focusing on the material. And I think that LA isn't known for that value system, but I came to find that through the help of surrounding myself with really healthy, grounded people. And I just feel much happier. And I love beautiful things and I have goals and aspirations. I love finance and business, but it can't be the reason why I wake up in the morning. And so, yeah, I had to go down a pretty brutal journey of unpacking that for sure.
Wow.
You do. I can tell you love nice things and aesthetics because if you guys are watching the video version of this, it's a vibe in here.
The tones.
Like, there's a candle lit right now. There's like pink flowers. Like it's really nice in here right now.
I did run out and get those flowers before you guys came. I'm not gonna lie. That was
so
an
funny.
intentional
That's
choice.
a move my wife would totally make too.
I know,
I do love how you are very aware about where you came from, and you know it's tough because your upbringing has such a huge impact on where you live, where you end up, what tax bracket you might be starting out with, you know, in the family you grow up with, and that's stuff that's not really talked about a lot because we love talking about freelancer creative tips on the podcast, entrepreneurs, everything business. But a lot of times it gets lost because we're speaking to people who may have very different backgrounds.
Yeah.
Like we all come from different families, different races, different cultures, and that can have a huge impact on the trajectory of where you're headed.
Absolutely.
And so one question I would love to ask is dialing back on your story a little bit on digital marketing. Obviously, you went off on a lot of the things that you're really talented at. I would consider yourself an expert in a lot of those fields.
Thank you.
Before you got into Olliepop, where do you feel like, did you ever have a moment where you're thinking, wow, I'm doing too much? Or how can I hone in on like one thing? Or were you just kind of owning the whole, I'm very talented in all these areas and I'm just going to own just being really useful and practical with all my skills? Or was there a point where you're thinking, man, I should really hone in on one thing and go all in?
Yeah, that's a great question as well. I think in the beginning, I was so hungry to grow that I said yes to everything. And I was like, I could watch a YouTube about any different aspect of marketing and learn something. Or my way was like, I'll just get on the horse and figure it out. And that was a really intense and bumpy road because it required a lot of work. It required a lot of, mess ups along the way. But I felt like what didn't kill me made me stronger. And so even though I experienced failure, I just started to adapt a growth mindset around it, which I really embraced at Olliepop. And it was like, you can never really fail if all you're doing is learning from every single experience. But to go back to that question, I really feel like having a niche is so important because you can't really do it all. And it's nice to have awareness of a lot of different things. I was actually just listening to another one of your podcast episodes and you guys were talking about this. I was like, this is so on point. And it's great to, be aware and be able to do a lot. But I think if you can really dive in super deep into one thing, it's really powerful and it's not something to be afraid of. And it's kind of like discovering like why we're really here. And that can change over time. But I think there are these seasons where we're like, this is the thing I'm supposed to do and connect to and commit to. And it's scary, but it's also freeing because you can embrace that as part of your identity. And I think it can just become really powerful if you lean into that commitment. So yeah, I think that came over time. At first, I said yes to everything. It was really stressful and scary and intense. And then I realized, just stick to a few lanes, have it a little bit more controlled, and then the execution became more flawless and free-flowing. So that was a positive transition for sure.
There's an analogy that comes up as you're talking about that, and it's almost like an ice cream shop, like Salt and Straw down the street, shout out. But it's like as a kid, you go to the ice cream shop, and you try all the different flavors, and then you end up figuring out what you like most. And I feel like most freelancers, that's kind of my journey, is being the jack of all trades photographer, going from maternity shoot to shooting a fitness commercial. The frick? But I'm thankful for that, right? Because I feel like I was able to really try on certain things and then get to a point where I'm like, all right, this is my niche. This is my focus.
Yeah, definitely.
I have a kind of selfish question to ask because I felt like I was dealt with this. How much, or do you believe in the statement, you have to fake it till you make it?
Ooh.
Like in your journey, because I went to school for entrepreneurship and digital marketing. And I feel like when I was younger, I had to put on a hat to like have a seat at the table. That's kind of how I felt. And I think I would love to hear thoughts on that. Like, do you feel like that's true? That's a true statement? Do you feel like you need a measure of that to succeed in a field, or?
I think it's a combination of faking it and also not faking it. I think you need a little bit of both. Like faking it till you make it, to me, I interpret it as believe in yourself to grow and expand, and to believe in yourself as this bigger, grander version of yourself, even though you're not there yet, but you know that you can make it. And then the other part is do the due diligence, the work, listening to podcasts, reading books, watching videos, sinking your teeth into real education to do your best. And of course, you can't learn everything, but I think it's like committing and giving your all, and also being forgiving of yourself when you make mistakes. But I think so many people, myself included, like would hold myself back because I'm like, oh, I'm not this type of girl. I can't do X, Y, and Z. I could never be a marketing director, or I could never do that. But really, I had to jump off the cliff to believe that I could do that in order to get there. And so I think for me, I just really want to empower people to take that jump and not be afraid no matter what happens, because we do look back at our lives, I think, with regret if we don't take that chance on ourselves. So yeah, I would say like faking it, I almost feel like it's more so like just believing in yourself that you are this grander version that you just need to like evolve into.
Love that.
That's money. I want to talk about something that I feel like, I want to get to the meat here. I feel like there's a lot of listeners that have gone to school or have kind of dabbled in marketing. It's a broad topic. And that was kind of me. I went to school for economics and marketing. And when I graduated, I'm like, everything that I learned in school, it's super hard to apply without getting that real world experience with an actual brand or company.
Yeah.
I worked at an agency for a year and learned a lot. For you, I want to hear about maybe a few of the things you learned leading up to when you worked at Olliepop. And then I want to really talk about that season, because I feel like there's listeners on here that are like, I freaking love Olliepop. And also they've seen maybe how Olliepop has gone from like startup to now more of a recognizable brand.
Being in stores and
But
whatnot.
I first want to hear, what was it like leading up to that point? Because I'm sure it took a whole lot, learning and also trial and error.
Yeah, definitely. Well, do you want the long story or the short story?
It's up to you. Honestly, I want to hear you going.
Yeah, we're
All
here to
right.
chat.
Well, so it's very interesting how it all went down. And I think you guys bring this up a lot with your listeners, but it's like, how do I find a client? Like, how did I find Olliepop? Where did they come from? So I met Ben Goodwin, one of the co-founders, because my neighbor was running their PR at the time. And she was friends with my mom. And of course, my mom was chatting with her and was like, my daughter does social media. And then I met Ben, and we met in person, and there was that instant connection. So I think word of mouth is still really powerful in spreading that awareness of who you are and what you do, and how, moms always talk, friends always talk. So that's how I initially met them. And then they had a previous beverage venture that they ended up selling. And then I thought I would never hear from them ever again. Like, it just was the kind of thing where they were one of my clients, and they came and then they went, and I just didn't foresee us ever working together. And I feel like there's this kind of magic that can happen in the universe sometimes, where people come into your life and you just feel something powerful.
Yeah.
And I had that experience with Ben, and then also with David Lester, the other co-founder at Olliepop. And like several months later, they came to me and said, oh, we have another beverage. It's a better name. It's a better formulation. It is like just far beyond what you could imagine in terms of what the previous beverage was. So I, of course, was intrigued. I loved them. And away we went, starting to work on Olliepop. And so in the early days, we're starting from 0 followers. The packaging wasn't even the same packaging you see now. 0 stores, 0 influencers, like nothing. And so what was so incredible at that time, and what I will always remember, is just like the energy and passion and tenacity of both Ben and David. Like, they were 2 of the most inspirational people I've ever met. And I think that they transferred that excitement over to me. And I would literally like jump out of bed to go work on Olliepop like almost every day for the first 3 years. So it was like, I think there's something powerful about the energy you bring into a space and powerful about your vision. And I think people are looking to be inspired, and those guys just had it down, and I like truly locked in and connected. And I was like, okay, I I'm in on this brand. I'm going to do whatever I can to bring my A game. And they really recognize that and they embrace that. And like even being a woman in business, I think it's really interesting when men see that and they're like, and they really embrace you as well, because that isn't always as common. So Ben and David just were like pumping me up to like, do the best job I could do, and really mentored me. And they were like, what ideas do you have for the brand?
That's
And for me, I was always like, I'm kind of like, I'm kind of into wellness. I'm a little hippie. I'm kind of woo-woo. I'm all about energy, but I also love business. I love bringing people together. And I always saw Olliepop as the vehicle for bringing people together the way soda does in general. And I love that it was good for you. So, whether it was an event, whether it was a photo shoot, an influencer we should work with, they always trusted that I would have a really good lens of who to bring into our world. And so I always just wanted to bring in like the highest quality people that genuinely cared for us. It wasn't as transactional as I feel like a lot of social media is. And like, I just spent a lot of time building relationships. So I would like legit like meet friends on the internet the way you guys met. And I would go hang out with people. I'd be like, let's go grab a coffee, or let's go to a yoga class. And that's how like, it just felt laying down like the brand brick by brick. Like it was one coffee meeting at a time. It was one photo shoot at a time. It was one giveaway at a time. And, we were like clawing our way and like inching our way up. But I think what it taught me was that it's possible. Like Rome wasn't built in a day.
Yeah.
And that you want to be surrounded by amazing people because it is hard work. And I think a lot of people want to cut corners. They want to buy followers. And I remember in the early days, David and I made the commitment, like, we're not going to ever buy followers, ever buy engagement. Like, we'd rather have less followers, but real people than fake followers and the same type of engagement. So
I like that.
I think that because we like got really clear on what the values were as a brand, like to me, like I became a better person because I worked at this company, because those guys were so next level in the way they ran the business, the way they treated me as a woman, the respect and responsibility they gave to me day in and day out. Like I was so much smaller in terms of who I was, and the way I didn't even like feel comfortable like opening up and like speaking my truth. And because they were so cool, they gave me this platform to really find myself and discover myself. Like I grew as a person, and I feel way more stronger and capable because of that. And so that motivated me to give so much to the business because it was such a healthy dynamic. And I don't know, it was just like, it was truly life-changing. And then, they brought in, amazing partners, and, it was amazing to watch them, fundraise. And then, we got like, we would go from like 100 stores to 500 stores to 5,000 stores to 20,000 stores. And then all of a sudden there's like every major celebrity is obsessed with Olliepop. So, and they all, I think, connected back to that original seed of like, we are dope people who actually care about others and just want to connect. And I think that that's what was so cool, was seeing like that intentionality and that energy, like just transcended it as it grew.
It's cool to hear there was shared values there. Because like when we first started, you're like health wellness. This is the wellness center. Listen, Olliepop's one of the most well-known now, like health and wellness prebiotic sodas on the market. So it's cool that you connected with these guys that also had those similarities. And I want to hear about real quick, freelancers, when they hear the word startup and like working for a startup, they're kind of like, oh, geez, like most likely they correlate that with no money.
Yeah.
So I don't know. I want to hear from you, like, how did you push through that? Because I know that there's definitely listeners. I myself, whenever I get startups reaching out to me and they start with, we want to work with you, but we're kind of in a position where we're trying to grow. What does that look like?
Yeah, I think that, again, like I feel like money is energy, right? So I think that having a healthy sense of self-worth and your relationship to money, like it's good to start there first. Be like, what's my story around money? Like, what did my family tell me about money? How hard it is to make money, what I should be charging for this service. And I think it's good to clear some of that and work through some of that and like develop that sense of self-worth. And then once you've done that, I think, everyone's at a different phase and stage of the amount that they can offer and the kind of real, the real years they've had under their belt. So like when I first started my social media company, and I wrote this down and wanted to share it, like I really didn't know that much. And I, of course, was gregarious and hardworking, and I was a photographer, but I didn't go to school for marketing, and I didn't go to an agency. I wasn't trained.
Wow.
And I really was like it was kind of like a train heading like off the cliff at times. It really wasn't a pretty sight. And so what I loved about being at Olliepop is I got so much structure and training there. And I feel like from a financial perspective, as I got like just real education and coupled with kind of my, my passion, my creative side, like that, the amount that I, could earn would go up. But it wasn't like I just threw out some random number. I feel like there's kind of like this dance of like, what you feel like you're worth, what's happening in the market, and kind of what tactile skills can you actually offer. And it's like a combination of all those three things fit into one. And that might change. Like some startups too, like they might go a year and the owners might not pay themselves, and they'll only pay their people. Like those are things to pay attention to, True. I think that, money is such a big thing to unpack, but
I love that.
But I think that there's just reasons and seasons, and the finance, like it can ebb and flow.
At that time, it made sense.
At the time, it totally made sense. And like, there'll be a day maybe where like, I want to start my own business and I'm not going to make any money for the first year, but it might grow, and it doesn't mean I'm not valued. But I just think that like it's kind of case by case. But I do think that it is really important to like work on your value and self-worth, and like to not work for free unless that's a particular situation that it makes sense. But I think it's really powerful. And I think money is it's just different than I think what we've been told. I think it's good to work on that story.
Money is definitely a little a taboo sometimes. Yeah. Especially on podcasts. I mean, me and Paul talk about this all the time off the mic. It's actually so valuable just to talk about money. We love talking about business and things like that on a podcast because it's the stuff you don't really learn in school unless you're like growing up in a family that's very like transparent about money. You don't learn about it from your family. So you only learn it from like being in the workforce. And I think one thing I would love to kind of go into a little bit is a lot of people listening, we talk about freelancing a lot. But when I hear the passion that you have for Olliepop and the journey you went there, I feel like because I can relate to a lot of that from my last, I used to work for a startup as well. And I can relate to a lot of the growth that I experienced working there. And I think that sometimes gets lost in the conversation when people are starting their own thing. Because that's like the sexy thing to do, right? Like start your own business, crush it, be a freelancer, make 6 figures, all on your own, all self-made. But there's like a huge part of the equation, which is like you gain so much experience, so much knowledge at Olliepop. What would you say to someone who hasn't had that experience, but is like maybe wanting to freelance? Like what advice would you give them? Like, should they maybe go seek out a place where they can learn skills, like really be in the trenches on a job? And if they didn't go to school for it, obviously.
Yeah, I think that I was really afraid of getting tied down. It was like, I was afraid of, committing, let's say, to that kind of a relationship. And I'm sure freelancers all the time are like, wait, what if I don't like it? And what if it doesn't work out and this and that? But I think, I'd never been on salary before Olliepop. I was always a freelancer. I always was an entrepreneur, and it wasn't really working. And I was like forcing it to work. I was like, please, can I just figure it out? And I didn't really have the structure I needed to thrive. And so I was like, well, I'll take this chance. Olliepop's doing well. What's the worst that could happen? And then I go in-house, and it was like, oh my God, thank God I went in-house. Like it was the best experience. Wow. It was so grounding. It was, for me in that time, I loved knowing I was going to get paid that amount every month and, having benefits. So it was, and I learned so much about business, and I learned so much about myself. And I loved feeling like I was kind of in this, community of other, people that believed in the brand as much as me, because I think with freelancers, sometimes you don't emotionally drop in as deep as you do when you're actually working for the company. Wow. And there's different times, facts, and there's different times when you want to do that and times when you don't. And, I'd been at Olliepop for many years and recently, had just left, and it was like the perfect time because I dropped in so deep for so long, and it was great. And then
put in those hours though.
Yeah, lots of hours. But then it was time to go, and that was so hard. Like I even got emotional about it. I was like, oh my God, this was like my heart and soul, and I put so much love into it. But being able to step aside and kind of pass the baton on was so beautiful and freeing. And now I'm more in that kind of freelance space, and it's just beautiful. And I think it's great to kind of find the ebbs and flows of the journey, and not just say I'm a freelancer or I only work in house. Like maybe you don't know what you'll like until you try it.
Yeah. I want to touch on two things. You got to give credit where it's due. The leaders, the guys that started Olliepop, I think their leadership made such an impact on their growth from the beginning. Because I find that even rooms that I'm in, when I'm on set with clients, I set the tone
Yeah.
for how the shoot goes.
Yeah.
It's like baseball. It's the pitcher.
Yeah.
So the fact that they were pumped up and excited about it, it sounds like it was easier for you to sign up to do it.
Mm-hmm.
And then also I want to touch on the fact that I think as freelancers need to get better at almost acting as if they're an extension of their client's company, but they're a part of it. Because I think you're right, where there is that detachment aspect where freelancers sometimes are like, well, I'm not in-house. You don't owe me anything. When actually it's like, no, if you're able to almost become an irreplaceable asset partner
Mm-hmm.
by kind of going all in with them on that.
Yeah, definitely. I think that, we're in a time and space where sometimes it's like, it's hard to create like a really trusting relationship in business. I could see freelancers being like, I don't know if I like really trust them or if I really want to go there. And like, for me, it felt really good to take that leap and develop trust. And like, I don't know, just like Ben and David, like they really did, because they were such good guys and I got such a profound experience out of it. Like I said, I just woke up with so much energy and excitement. And
That's
to
cool.
me, like that's priceless. Like
Yep.
at the end of the day, we want to just feel fulfilled and joyful and feel like I have a job that I'm excited to do and I'm contributing. And so I found that at Olliepop. And
That's cool.
and as a woman too, it's so cool that they, I think, really created that environment to thrive. And I feel like the way they're doing business is so different than how so many other businesses operate. Like I could see them writing books about like how they did it, because I myself had never experienced anything like it. And I think they pioneered a lot of new ways of doing things. And it was all remote too, which is crazy that
Wow.
they were able to continue on that path. But again, it's like, it's all energy and it's how you treat people and it's how you make people feel. And if you make people feel amazing, like they're going to want to stick around. If you actually respect people, they're going to want to go above and beyond and set that tone. And so I think that it's just nice to meet people who like do commit to that like level of respect for others. And I feel like it's rare in our world sometimes now. So it's just like you stand out. And I felt that immediately from that. I was like, they're above 10 out of 10 individuals. And I love being around it.
That's sweet.
Leadership is so big. Like leadership is huge. I would love to switch gears a little bit on like the target audience as far as freelancers looking to work with brands. You mentioned there's like, sometimes there's not a lot of trust when you're looking for a company to work for. Like you don't know what the leadership is like. You don't know if they're going to treat you well. But I would argue that it's the same on the other side of the coin. Like when you're a freelancer, you don't even know who to trust as a brand, who you want to invest in as like a partner and work with on. So I know that you were a big part of landing some of Olliepop's like big, I guess you could say ambassadors, people you work with, sponsorships, whatnot. When a creator is trying to work with a brand like Olliepop, right, I would say that's like pretty up our alley as far as the type of size.
Oh, you guys are getting blown up in the DMs. I know.
Yeah, like people are like, oh, I would love to work together, like for photo or for video or for art, graphic design or website building. Or you're constantly getting hit up. We can optimize this part.
Crazy DMs.
Is there anything that you feel like stands out to the ones that you did work with? Like what about their pitch? What about them stood out where you're like, yeah, I want to bring you on and work with Olliepop?
Of course. Okay, this is like the best. I think this is one of the greatest things that like I can think of. But basically, and this is how I started my own business. But if you love a brand and you're creative, I think the best thing you can do is actually create something and tag them in it without getting paid, without a conversation. Like if you love them, go off and make something beautiful and tag them, because I bet everything on that their social media manager is going to see it and recognize and be like, who is this photographer, this graphic designer, this copywriter? Like if they're a good social media manager, they're always on the lookout for talent. And if it's high quality, they're going to recognize it. And you've taken time out of your life to invest in the brand before they've invested in you. And I think it really speaks volumes. So that's what I did to start my social company. I photographed products and I interviewed people and I started just creating work. And I said, well, I could do this for your business if you like. And they were like, done deal, perfect. Where do I sign? So I think that there's, you could do that even on a budget and in a small way, or if you're tagging the brand all the time. And I think there's ways to do it and be scrappy. But to me, that really stands out. So that's one piece. And the other piece, I think, is like really like, I think writing thoughtful letters does go a long way, you know, via email. I do think in the DMs, it's really hard. I think getting an email of the social media manager can go farther. I've gotten so many funny like pitches and like weird memes with like, you know, owls in them. Like who even knows? It's just like a whole vibe in there. But like,
That's great.
but I would just say that writing a thoughtful email about how the brand has affected you, like people like thoughtfulness goes so far these days when people like just take a momo to, you know, make something original and thoughtful. Like you don't have to write hundreds of paragraphs, but like just take a moment to be like, wow, like this soda really affected my life and I gave it to my grandfather and he's, you know, not feeling so great and it made his stomach feel better or whatever. Like I think opening your heart up and being human is so refreshing and attractive. And also like showing the brand who you really are. Like what's your personality? Like, are you kind of funny? Are you, you know, super creative, like whatever it is. And, but I think, yeah, starting to just make something first that you can tag them in is a great, I would say, first step. And then followed up by like a really thoughtful and intentional letter as a second would be my words of advice.
Those are powerful golden nuggets right there.
Yo, people are about to be making some crazy Olliepop content after this.
No, but here's the deal.
Olliepop,
You're welcome,
hashtag Olliepop.
I think there's a lot of freelancers out there that are just looking for quick transactions and like they're blowing up brands in the DMs with template messages.
Right.
And they're also sending out emails with like template messages where I know for a fact that there's people that reach out that haven't even tried the product yet.
Yeah.
So I love that you shared that golden nugget of like doing a spec project or spec work with the product. Invest money in it, invest time. It goes such a long way. And then also standing out in the emails.
Yeah.
Not sending it to the customer service email, but doing their research, finding who the social media marketing director or head of digital marketing is.
Shout out LinkedIn.
Hey, get on that LinkedIn game.
I was also going to say too that I feel like a lot of brands I think are also looking for talent all the time. So, you know, I remember this was the other thing, like you might make something and the brand would love it. And then you could be like, oh, if you want to license it, you could license this piece for ads. Like everyone wants ad content right now or, you know, TikTok and video. So you could make something and potentially make money on it and don't go into it wanting that to be your end result.
Yeah.
But if it feels right, if it feels authentic, like I think licensing content for ads is a really great way to generate revenue for yourself too. And, you know, just there's other opportunities with the piece that you make.
Yep.
Yeah. We're kind of approaching the 35-minute mark here. One question I would love to ask is, after doing some research and figuring out on your website's awesome, by the way.
Thank you. It's going to get a rebrand. Don't worry.
All right, so this is,
hey, don't look at it yet then.
This episode is sponsored by Squarespace. No, I'm just kidding. So actually, the sponsor for today's episode.
No, we
it's
know
like our
no sponsors.
segue right there. You mentioned that you love creating things that are like lasting and meaningful.
Yeah.
Right. Can you explain that a little bit? Like, what do you mean by creating things that are lasting and meaningful? Because you seem like someone who is very driven with like a mission and not just doing like the day-to-day motions. Like there needs to be something higher than that. There needs to be like a motive. There needs to be a fulfillment. There needs to be purpose. And I think that is what a lot of creatives might be missing in the equation when they're trying to succeed. Is like they don't have the purpose. They don't have like the fulfillment or the direction. So can you explain that lasting and meaningful a little bit?
Yeah, definitely. I think that for me, it's a feeling. It's something that I see I kind of look at it more as like this kind of long-term timeline. Like, and I think I'm looking long-term at like, you know, are the values of the brand, you know, kind of sustainable? Like a lot of brands want to grow, they want to grow big, they want to sell quick. And there's nothing wrong with that. But I think in terms of me and my like individual makeup, I really want to work with brands that, well, one, like are committed to like wanting to make people's lives better in some sort of way, even if it's a beauty product. And I think for me, sometimes I love surface level things, but I'm more of like a deep, I like deeper things. I like brands that aren't afraid to be more soulful and deep. Like even I think about music all the time. I'm like, wow, like old music is so soulful. Like there's so much depth and richness and there's a whole world that you step inside of, and I crave that. And so I'm looking for that from a brand or from an experience. Nice. And I think people are like, oh yeah, that kind of music, you know, we don't see it that much or we don't experience it that much today. But like, I got that experience like at Olliepop. Like it was so
Dang, that's
soulful.
cool.
It was so rich. It was so real for me. So for me, looking for a brand, obviously like the meaning is in the eye of the beholder, but I just really need to believe in something. And I think that brands can really like change people's lives forever. So I'm looking for brands that can make a positive impact on society in some way. And I guess that's more of like my own subjective version of that.
incredible.
But Olliepop had that, and then the current projects I'm on have that as well. And for me, it's like I do wake up with purpose and passion because the money doesn't fulfill you on that level, and it never will.
Big facts.
It's you need it. You need money. Money's great. We love money. Money's beautiful, but you want to feel fulfilled in your soul and inside. And I think that money's just not. It's never gonna really do that. It can only last. That feeling can only last for so long. So I don't know if that answered the question.
does.
Sure,
But
that was good.
It does, yeah.
What I love about your just your heart and also your personality is the depth. And I feel like me and Ed were talking about this before this episode where it's like we're done with surface level relationships, to be honest.
Yeah.
And we love when people are just their true authentic selves. And I know it's a journey, but it's just cool to see how, like, hearing your story from the beginning to now, and also hearing how much you care about the values of the brands you work with. Because it reminds me of my wife, and like she reads like the mission statement for products we buy at the grocery store. I'm like, hey, chill, like
So
relax.
She's like looking on
Like
the
not even the
grocery
ingredients.
shelf.
She's like, no, I got to read the story on the back.
yeah, she's preaching on aisle 3, you guys.
Wow.
But
I
it
love
goes
that.
such a long way. Kind of want to like bring this home by asking you, leaving Olliepop and now going back to freelance. Like, what does that look like for you? Like, are you still working with Olliepop? Are you taking on clients? Because you went from freelance to being in-house on salary, where you could you could project your income, get those benefits, to now kind of doing your own thing. I'd love to hear kind of post Olliepop what that looks like.
Yeah, well, it was definitely a scary transition because I'd been with them for many years. But I've stepped in as a marketing director for an incredible sustainable clothing brand called Goldie Tees.
Oh, come on.
It's
Nice.
all based, we make everything out of sustainably sourced Pima cotton, which is the highest, softest quality cotton in the
softest.
world, in Peru. And it's an amazing brand. Like the product is beautiful. The whole goal of the company is to help women look and feel amazing. So I was like, sign me up. And just also in fashion, there's not a lot of truly sustainable brands. And I was really drawn to that story and asked a lot of questions and kind of learned about the connectivity between, the manufacturers and production, and then finally like how it makes its way like into a store. And I felt like every touch point was kind of it was a pioneer for like the future of how fashion could kind of move in that direction. So I was like, whoa, the same way Olliepop was a pioneer of like transitioning people onto a better type of soda. I feel like Goldie is the same way. It's like showing people a new way to buy fashion in terms of the way it's sourced, and also the
cool.
quality is like top notch. So so I'm actually coming as a marketing director, and I still consult with some brands on the side. But again, I do see this like through line of like, I just want to help brands pioneer into these new spaces. And there's, obviously an element of like, I believe in them, I stand by
Wow.
them, but I also feel like they're pushing the edge of what is possible in their category, in their space. And like, that's what really drives me now. So it's kind of all things Goldie at the moment. And then consulting for a couple of other brands. And then I'm actually working on an educational platform that I'm planning to release next year. And it will be like everything that I've learned in social and digital marketing. So I can teach small businesses, or really any size business, how to do what I do. And I'm hoping like I'll be able to offer certifications so I can like train social media managers who can go in-house at brands. How to do what they do, because I get so many inquiries all the time. Like, we need a social media manager. We need content creators, and I feel like I obviously can't service them all. So I'm like, what if I could take my education and help train people and also infuse like this level of passion and realness and depth to it? I feel like it could, trickle through the ethers and like maybe
That's
even make
sweet.
social a more positive space as well. Because I feel like the platforms are so it's all like how we use it, right? Like you
Yeah.
can use a sword for good and a sword for bad, but like social media can also become like a huge positive platform. So if I can bring that energy to it, I feel like it could be a domino effect, and that's kind of what I would like to do. So
Wow,
the secret drop.
I'm like fired up after this podcast. I want to like
Yeah.
go build businesses now.
Seriously.
Like straight up. Like I feel like lazy. I feel like I've been lazy the last week, honestly. I think, yeah, I really love this episode because it shows one common denominator amongst all your journey over the years. I feel like you just didn't give up. Like you didn't let up. You didn't let imposter syndrome stop you. Like you're literally a marketing director now, and you were doing more like social. And I mean, I'm sure that you wore a lot of hats at Olliepop, but the fact that you can say now today on this podcast that you are now a marketing director for this brand, it just goes to show all the work you put in over the last couple of years. So really like kudos to you, because that's not easy to do. And I think there's a lot of gems for freelancers in here as well, because there's so many things you need to realize that it's not just landing clients and making money.
Mm-hmm.
There's like way more to the equation than just making money and shooting with a camera. There's so many more things to think about. And if you do make it like holistic and you make it more about your passion, you stay on the mission, you'll be surprised at what's at the end of the road for that.
I want to call that out too, because first of all, I want to applaud you for like finding and aligning yourself with brands that you actually connect with versus be like, oh, there's money here.
Yeah.
Because as you're talking, I'm like, literally you and my wife Sammy need to like hang out ASAP.
No, I know. I always knew there was a vibe.
She went to college and studied sustainable apparel, actually.
Oh my God.
So like she
Wow.
is obsessed with buying from small craftsmen. She's always texting me links from Etsy. I'm like, girl, you got it, girl. Come on, get it. But I think this is a super helpful episode for people, whether they're freelance or not freelance, because I think you've really painted a awesome picture of like, it's okay to do freelance and pursue that. And it's also awesome to be like in-house, because at the end of the day, as long as you feel like you can align yourself with their values and what they're doing and the product they're selling, that's huge. You got to also believe in the product in order to also like feel energized when you wake up. Can't tell you how many people I've met that are shooting for brands. They're like, I would never drink that product. I'm like, the heck?
Yeah.
Why are you working for them?
Oh, why are you
Yeah.
So that's also cool, is because it bleeds into everything that you
for
do.
sure.
Absolutely. And it's like, why not have it all, right? Like,
Come
why
on.
not
There's
like
enough
get
brands,
paid,
yeah.
feel amazing about who you're
So
working
many
with? And
brands.
obviously that's not the case, and not every day is perfect, or no brand is perfect, but it's like, if it can mostly be that, like, why not
You could
have it
strive
all?
for that.
Yeah, totally. And I think in our era too, it's like, I just think like fulfillment and getting fulfillment from real grounded places is super important, especially as like we're living in the era of social media where like there's just such a focus on the material, and we're selling products, which is a material thing. And like, that's great. And it's wonderful, but like, we can't lose sight of like what really matters underneath it all. And that drives the business. Like that drives the values, that drives the leadership. So I think I just wanted to come on and like remind people of that, because I saw this, tiny seedling like burst into this incredible monolithic company, but they really retain the values. And like, that's something I hope to bring to every company I work with, or whatever company hears this. It's like, people really do care about that. And if it, I think a lot of people say, oh, a lot of brands like will have, their values presentation, but like to actually live it, which is what I experienced with Ben and David, like it really did change me as a person. And I'm like, I want to be like those guys
So
for the,
cool.
for the rest
awesome.
of my life. So I hope that it was inspirational and
It was.
I got a
helpful.
lot from it, honestly.
I feel inspired, honestly, from that.
I'm so glad.
Yeah, thank you again so much for coming onto the podcast. Where can people find you if they want to?
Yeah,
more
yeah,
about
let's
you.
blow,
can,
blow her up on the DMs.
Yeah,
Yeah.
please. I would love to be blown up on the DMs. Send me your content at Alexa Gray and Co. ALEXAGRAY and AND Co.
Nice.
And then I guess I can also drop the name of the social media company that I'm going to be launching, because
Let's do
You heard it first.
you heard it first. So it's going to be Social Bloom, social, and then Bloom with an E at the end. So we'll be
I
on
like that.
Instagram, TikTok, the website, everything will be launching next year, but brands will be able to sign up and be notified of when everything is released. And there'll probably be a lot of interesting things that will be on there
Wow.
to
So cool.
support people for social media and marketing, or even hiring social media managers for their own businesses. So I'm really excited about that as well.
That's awesome. Really looking forward to seeing how that, comes together and just grows, because with your passion, I know it's going to go places. if anyone's watching on the video, I just want to mention, it got real vibey in here because it
Yeah.
got super dark.
Heck yeah.
So like Thomas
being with
is
us, yeah.
behind the cameras. I'm like, dude, it just got so dark. Like I could tell he's just like low key sweating back there. Like this lighting looks, the lighting probably looks so different from where it did just like an hour ago. So if you've been watching this on video, thanks for riding with us because it just got dark in here. But I just wanted to mention that.
Totally.
Yeah, we do call this the wellness center, so no artificial lighting.
Yeah, we ain't about that.
We're going down with the
Bro,
sun.
lighting equipment overrated. Who needs that?
We're on nature's clock at the wellness center, so it's very on brand.
Thank you so much for being on the pod. And
Thank you guys. It was so fun.
I know a lot of people that are listening are going to find value from it.
Sweet.
So honored. Thank you guys.
Bye.
Hey.